Hey guys, it's Matt from Worship Bass Tutorials. Today I'm going to give you a couple of tips to take your bass playing for worship to the next level. Tip number one is going to be palm muting. So there are parts in the songs that aren't necessarily low energy, they're actually pretty high energy, but they're not as high as the big choruses are. So for example, you've just finished a low chorus and you're going into a verse 2, a drum beat comes in, what do? Generally speaking, a lot of people like to do diamonds. Or they'll lock in with a kick. Locking in with a kick is a good option, but what I like to do for moments like that is bust out my pick and palm mute. That really helps keep the energy up a little bit, and it also helps you lock into the drums. Tip number two, going high at the end of a build. So if we hold the 4 at the end of this chord progression, it's not very impactful, but if on that low G, if we bring it up to the high G, sounds a lot better. What we've done by going to the high Gs, we actually introduced some tension. So we build some tension on the high G, and then we release it when we go back to the lower D. Another thing you can do to build some tension is to save your lowest note for later in the song. If we play a simple build like this, and then we hit the drop with a low note, see, that low E has a lot more impact because we've never played it yet. If we've been playing that low E the entire time, it's not as big of a deal when we go to it. There's a few different ways we can build tension. One of them is changing the rhythm to be more pressing. So if we start with something simple, pick it up, after we build all that tension, we get a lot more payoff when we go back to the original chord progression and the original pattern. You gotta be careful though. You can't spend too much time high on the fretboard building tension without releasing it though, because that actually gets to be a little bit mentally exhausting for the listener. Number 3, stay in the pocket with the kick. Whatever beat the drums are doing, 99% of the time, we wanna stick with that. So if the drums are doing something simple, just make sure you stick with it. Tip number 4, fingers versus pick. Know which one to use and when. What I like to do is I like to use my fingers for the lower parts where I need my tone to be dark. That works really well for a low verse or a low chorus. If I do that same thing but with my pick, I get a lot more aggression out of that, and that might not necessarily go over well for that part of the song. For me, a good rule of thumb is if you can cover up the attack of the pick a little bit with some percussion, so a snare hit or something else that covers up that frequency range, then you probably want to be using a pick. Overall, your tone is a little bitier, and that it works better when the drums are in big. If the drums aren't in very big, you probably want to be using your fingers. And don't be afraid to switch between a pick and your fingers in the middle of a song. For instance, a lot of the times I'll start out a song really low with my fingers and up close to the fretboard to get some really dark tone, and then towards the bigger parts at the end, I'll switch to a pick and start getting more aggression and drive out of my tone. Tip number 5, drive versus clean. This is pretty similar to using your fingers versus your pick, and a good rule of thumb is if you're using your fingers, you want clean tone, and if you're using a pick, you want to have drive. This isn't always true. There are times where you want to use your pick with clean tone as well. There's a very specific sound that you get from that, but you have to play it by ear. Tip number 6, keep it simple. This may be one of the most important rules. For the most part, you don't want to be going crazy doing fills and runs. You're the foundation that all the other instruments are building off of. Give them a solid foundation to work off of. I could take a really simple progression and make it really complicated, and that wouldn't leave any other room for any of the other instruments to do what they need to do. So if we have something like this, that leaves almost no room for any of the other instruments. Keep it simple. You can do a fill here and there, but don't do anything crazy.